Chapter 40. He ran far that day, away from the town, letting the wind wash him. When he returned to the West End, he heard in the distance Miss Pickwell whistling for her children at dinner time. Though he had heard the whistle many times, he had not answered it since his first day in town. Now he felt as he had that day, that it was meant for him. This time, of course, there was a difference. He was no stranger. He was Maniac Magee, the kid who had walked barefoot through the dump near their house. The Pickwell children cheered when he showed up and treated him like a legend in the flesh. Mrs. Pickwell did better. She treated him like a member of the family, and if she would have been surprised he hadn't come at her whistle. Nor was Maniac the only visitor for dinner. Mr. Pickwell had brought home a down-and-out shoe salesman in sore need of sympathy and a good meal. As Maniac ate and talked and laughed his way through dinner, he couldn't help thinking of the Beals. How alike these two families were. Friendly, giving, accepting. So easily he could picture the Beals' brown faces around their dinner table and the little Pickwell kids' white bodies in the bathtub at 728 Sycamore. Whoever had made of Hector Street a bearer, it was surely not these people. Fortified by his good times at the Pickwells, Maniac returned to the McNabs. After the East End scare, Russell and Piper no longer demanded stunts of him to return to attending school. On the other hand, this was relief to Maniac, but on the other, if he left him with less influence over them. He could always extort a day or two of class out of them for a free weekly pizza. Beyond that, he goaded them towards school any way he could. He organized a marbles tournament that could take place only in the schoolyard during recess. He tried reading to them, as he had Hester and Lester, and to Grayson, but they paid so much attention as the Roaches did. He took them to the library, then scrapped the idea after their shenanigans left the librarian blubbering and blue-faced. When May arrived, with its warm weather, and blew away what little power he had left, the boys began again to dream of travel. Wood appeared to be in the backyard. They were building a raft. "Gonna sail down the river to the ocean," they said. One day he heard frenzied horn honking and screaming. He turned out to see an ancient, rusty, gas-hogging convertible rolling up, with Russell behind the wheel and Piper jumping up and down and shrieking in the back seat. By the time Maniac caught up, they were gone, and the car was shuddering against a telephone pole. Another time he had to run them down and haul them back to Dorsey's grocery, where he'd made them empty their bulging pockets of 50 bubble gums they had stolen. It was a maddening, chaotic time for Maniac. Running in the mornings and reading in the afternoons gave him just enough stability to endure the zany nights at the McNabs. When he asked himself why he didn't just drop them, the answer was never clear. It wasn't so much as he wanted to stay at their house that he couldn't go. In some vague way, to abandon the McNab boys would have been to abandon something of himself. He couldn't shake the suspicion that deep inside, Russell and Piper McNab, in the prayer-dark seed of their kidhoods, were too identical to Hester and Lester Beale. But they were spoiling, rotting from the outside in, like a pair of peaches in the sun. Soon, unless somebody did something, the rot was going to reach their pits. And yet he held back. Oh, he prodded and persuaded and inspired and bribed the boys to do right, but he never forced them, never commanded, never shouted, because to do so would be parental, and he was not ready for that. How could he act as a father to these boys when he himself ached to be somebody's son? But then one day the boys went too far. He found them playing in the old glove Grayson had given him for Christmas. As if it wasn't bad enough, they were using it as a football, punting it back and forth. Maniac exploded. He popped off for a good 10 minutes, got it all out. It was the last straw. He told them from now on he was going to be different. No more Mr. Nice Guy. When I say jump, he says, you say how high. You got it? They got it. For the first time in their lives, the boys were speechless. Speechless as they did their homework that night. Speechless as they went to bed at 9 o'clock. Speechless as they went off to school the next morning. The peace lasted 3 days. Shock accounted for the first day. The second and third days were a new game called Obedience or Be Good. When the game lost its appeal, Maniac lost his power. He told them to sit, they stood. He told them to stand, they sat. Instead of going to school, they worked on their raft. Instead of doing homework, they played war in the pillbox. They brought their plastic weapons down from the hole and stationed themselves in the 2 small gunnery slots of the cinder block wall and blasted away anyone moving through the house. Not to mention imaginary rebels screaming through the doors and over the windowsills. "Stop!" Maniac yelled and snatched the 2 red gun barrels protruding from the slots. In a moment, 2 more barrels appeared. "Stop!" he commanded. "Ain't shooting you," Russell whined. "We're shooting them rebels. Bam, 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 pow! Got one, pow, bam, got one, bam, bam!" "I said stop!" Maniac grabbed the gun, threw them on the floor, and stomped on them. He didn't stop until they were plastic splinters. The only sound was that of the turtle scratching somewhere in the room. The gunnery slots framed the boys' dumbstruck faces. Russell was the first to speak. "You get out of my house." "Yeah," sneered Piper. "Out of here." Maniac went upstairs, got his satchel, and was gone. That night and the next night he slept in the park. The following day, as he sat reading in the library, in came the McNabb boys. They rushed to him. "Hey, Maniac," blurted Piper. "We've been looking all over for you. Yeah, come to my birthday party. I'm having a party tomorrow. What'd you say? Coming?" Maniac couldn't believe it. Their ugly feelings of the other day showed nowhere on their excited faces. "Oh, come on, Maniac, you gotta." And just like that, as he stared at them, the idea came, an idea as zany as they were. The words seemed to lift right off of their faces like sunburnt skin peeling. "Well, okay," he said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "If I can bring somebody with me." "Sure, bring anybody. We're going to have a party." The librarians edged closer to the phone. Chapter 41. The McNabb boys didn't know whom they did expect Maniac to bring to this party, but one thing for sure, they did not expect him to come walking through their front door with a black kid. And that was only half of it. From the way the kid swaggered in, from the candy bar that jutted like a chocolate stogie from the corner of his mouth, from the ripstone evil scowl on his face, this kid had to be none other than Mars Bar Thompson himself. If black meant bad, if black meant in-your-face nastiness, if black meant as far from white as you could get, then Mars Bar Thompson was the blackest of the black. Here, in the middle of their living room, stopping the party, the neighbor kids, the Cobras, even George McNabb, stopping them dead as traffic, just walking in through the front door, the steel door, breezing right on in, past the bars, standing there in I owns this joint way, before they knew what was happening, before anyone could reach for anything, which of course is just what Maniac had in mind. Remembering how little Grayson had known about black people and black homes, thinking of the McNabbs' wrong-headed notions, thinking of Mars Bar's knee-jerk reaction to anyone wearing a white skin, and thinking, naturally, what else would you expect? Whites never go inside blacks' homes, much less inside their own thoughts and feelings, and blacks are just as ignorant of whites sometimes. What white kid could hate black kid after spending 5 minutes in the Beals house? And what black kid could hate whites after answering Miss Pickwell's dinner whistle? But the East Enders stayed in the East, and the West Enders stayed in the West. And the less they knew of each other, the more they invented. It hadn't been easy finding Mars Bar, taking all his lip from cheating on the Rays, talking about bumps and about shoves, Mars goading him to fight, but keeping his own cool, matching Mars Bar's glare for glare, telling him it wasn't as bad as he thought he was, really stoking him now, making him slam his candy bar on the ground and say, "No, you want to tell me why I ain't bad, fish? Go ahead, 'fore I waste you." Chest to chest. Keeping cool. Letting Mars do all the huffing. Simple. You don't cross Hector. You stay over here, where it's safe. How bad would you be over there? Stepping back, then folding his arms, smugging it up just enough, standing there in his white skin, gazing nonchalantly about 6 blocks deep into the heart of the black side. Guess what makes me badder than you? They did not go straight to McNabb's. First, they went to the Pickwells. Maniac wanted Mars Bar to see the best of the West End. The little Pickwells made as much fuss over Mars Bar as over Maniac. They believed, as did all little kids on the West End, that he carried 100 Mars Bars with him at all times. Not surprisingly, Mrs. Pickwell never batted an eye when she saw who was coming to her dinner table. It was quite a sight, all right. 16 Pickwells, plus Maniac, plus a down-and-out golf caddy, 18 so-called white faces, and Mars Bars Thompson. To his credit, Mars Bars didn't use the word fish belly or honky once, though on one occasion he did bend the truth a mite. When a Pickwell kid asked him if it was true about the famous race in April, the Maniac really beat him by going backwards. Mars Bar studied his fork for a minute and said, "Yeah, he went backwards, but you got the story wrong. Wasn't me he beat, was my brother Milky Way." The little kids couldn't understand why the grown-ups laughed for 5 minutes after that. As for Mars Bar himself, his expression never changed until the dinner was almost over, when the littlest non-baby Pickwell, Dolly, called him Mr. Bar, and even when it wasn't so much as a smile as a crack in his glare. Even if Mars wasn't letting on, Maniac could tell that he was pleased to learn his fame had spread to the West. When they left, half the Pickwell kids followed them, begging Mars to perform his legendary feat of stopping traffic. "Don't," Maniac warned. "It might not work over here." But the Pickwells persisted, and when they reached Marshall Street, Mars Bar commanded, "Stay here," and stepped into traffic. Not only did he shamble, jive, shuck, and hippodoodle all at his own pace, he did something he had never done before in the East End. He came to a complete and utter halt halfway across, and let nothing but the evil of his eyes take care of the rest. He stood like that for a full 1 minute. By the time he finally moved to the far side, so the legend goes, 23 cars, several bicycles, and a bus were stacked to a dead stop in both directions. Maniac hurried across while the Pickwells stood on the curb cheering and waving goodbye. But no one was cheering now in Fort McNabb, and Maniac knew that despite the swagger and the scowl and the chocolate stogie, Mars Bar Thompson was one uneasy dude. George McNabb was the first to speak. He stretched out on the only new piece of furniture in the house, a tilted-back lounge chair. He said to McNabb, "What's he doing here?" The awkward silence that followed was mercifully broken by Piper tugging at Maniac's arm. "Where's my birthday present? What'd you get for me?" Maniac pulled the present from his pocket. Piper explained, "A watch?" "No," said Maniac, "a compass. It tells you which direction you're going." "Like to the ocean," said Russell. "The ocean, Mexico, anywhere in the world. Only one thing." "What's that?" Maniac took the compass from Piper's hands. "I'm keeping it till school's over. And if you go every day, both of you, then you can have it back and sail around the world." "On a raft?" Piper cheered. "If it's a deal." Piper, Russell, and Maniac did a 3-way high five. "It's a deal." George McNabb pulled himself up from the easy chair and shuffled into the kitchen. He wore bare back slippers over bare feet. His white ankles were dirty. He took a beer can from the fridge and headed over the steps. "Let me know when he leaves," he said, and went upstairs. Maniac could feel the voltage that surged through Mars Bar and crackled black lightning from his eyes. Quickly he clapped his hands. "Hey, isn't this a party? Where's the game?" So they played games, silly games, whose main objective was to be shrieking and screaming. Mars Bar allowed himself to be dragged into them, but his jaw was clenched, and his eyes kept straying to the gaping hole in the ceiling, and to the cobras who were slouching against the walls and baseboards, sipping beers and watching his every move. None of them had spoken since Mars and Maniac walked in. Of course, as far as the little kids were concerned, the highlight of the whole party was not the birthday boy, Piper McNabb, but the McNabb's new pillbox. They found every excuse to stay inside it. They fought every space at the narrow gunnery slots. When Mars Bar whispered to Maniac, "What is that?" Maniac said it was a bomb shelter. Then Russell called, "Let's play Rebels! Whites in the pillbox, blacks outside!" The cheer went up, and a dozen kids stampeded into the pillbox. They grappled, circled, and center block walls and popped from the gunnery slots. "I'm going to be white. I'm white. Me too. Too many in here. We need more black people." "Not me. Not me. We ain't got enough guns. Only the ones with guns are in. The rest of you get out." "Give me a gun. I had it first. Come on, you meatballs." Black is the best part. You get to charge." "Yeah. Look, you can use beer cans for grenades. You can lob grenades at people." Then you do it. Well, somebody's got to be black. We ain't just playing. I'm counting. Time to hit 10. I want to see 5 of you out of here. 1, 2. Russell counted. No one came out. Not at 9, not at 10, not after 10. Maniac and Mars Bar stared in silence at the gunnery slaps. Her wide-eyed eyes began to appear, one pair atop the other. The 3 words that Mars Bar sneered, the joke that spat out, yeah, bomb shelter, did not even have the moment to themselves for just that another word. Geronimo came plunging the sky and landed in the floor, jarring, heart-stopping, crashed directly behind him. A cobra had jumped from a hole, a fat, red-haired cobra who is now rolling on the floor and laughing so hard as to wear all the cobras, that his face matched the color of his hair. You see him? Did you see him jump? I've never. Did you see his face? Somebody check out his pants. Check his drawers. Oh, man. Maniac had to wrap Mars Bar in a bear hug to keep him from charging the red roller. They laughed or stopped as if cut by scissors. The cobras were standing. Johnny McNabb sauntered forward. You got a problem, Sonny? That wasn't funny, John, said Maniac. He could have been hurt. McNabb kept his eyes on Mars Bar. I ain't talking to you, McGee. I'm talking to Sonny here. Don't you like our parties? Mars Bar strained against Maniac's arms. You ain't got to worry about me coming to no more of your parties. You ain't got no to worry about me invading this poop hole. Everyone comes to a block away. They faint from the smell. McNabb advanced. Maniac shouted, John, you owe me one. I brought the boys back. McNabb took another step, then stayed. The cobra stayed, and Maniac, clamping the struggling Mars Bar for dear life, lugged him down a gauntlet of seething eyes to the door and to the streets. Mars Bar wrenched free and stomped on ahead. Maniac followed. It was almost dark. High above the street lights were buzzing on one by one. After several blocks, Mars Bar wheeled. You suckered me. You soft me up with the pick peoples, then bring me here. What do you think? I'm gonna cry? Okay, I'm over it. I did it. I'm done. And don't you come round no more. You hear me? 'Cause you ain't got to see half of you. 'Cause you ain't only seen me half bad yet. He turned and headed due east. Maniac walked another way. It was a good question. What had he thought? What had he expected? A miracle? Well, come to think of it, maybe one had happened. While he was looking for one miracle, maybe another one had snuck up on him. Happened as he was clamping and lugging Mars Bar down the gauntlet of cobras, trying to keep him alive. And what was Mars Bar doing? Fighting him. Maniac, straining to get loose and bust some cobras. Outnumbered, outweighed, but not outhearted. That's what Maniac felt it. Pride for this East End warrior whom Maniac could feel trembling in his arms. Scared as any normal kid would be, but not showing it to them. Yeah, you're bad all right, Mars Bar. You're more than bad. You're good. Maniac stopped. He had been walking in circles. It was dark. He turned one way, then another, for the briefest moment thinking to go home. Thinking it's time to go home now. Then remembering that once again, he had no home to go to. Chapter 43. He slept in the park that night, and for the next dozen or so, sometimes in the buffalo shed, other times the bandshell benches or the pavilion. The nights were warm now. June was on its way. He ate here and there. For apples and carrots and day-old hamburger buns, he couldn't beat the deer and buffalo pens. A new Acme had opened, and the bakery section always had a tray of free samples sitting on the counter. And then there was always the Pickwells. It may have been an illusion, but it seemed that the hungrier he got, the farther Miss Pickwell's whistle traveled. Some dinner times there was hardly a spot in town from which he could not hear it. He read in the library. He joined a pickup game in the park, baseball, basketball. School was letting out. There was going to be more kids. Mornings were the best. He could rise with the sun's color before the sun itself, before the bison, and set out. He came to think of these apple skin hours as his special time with the town. There was not a street or alleyway or house or store, not even a garage, that he did not recognize. His footsteps fell everywhere, but on the bridge over the Schuylkill, his eyes everywhere, but on the P&W trolley trestle. And the people, most of them he did not know by name or face, yet they revealed themselves to him even as they slept. He knew them by their windows and cars and porches and toys they left outside. But most of all, he knew them by their backyards. Flowers, weeds, junk, pet houses, tree houses, vegetable gardens, rubber tires, grass ranging from desert sparse to shaggy to trim as a marine's haircut. The backyards were as different as individual faces. East End and West End, black and white, would begin only when the alarm clocks rang. For now, before sunrise, there was no division, no barriers. There was only the people, the families, the town, his town. And much of the town, he was as much of the town as anyone's. He knew he could be sleeping right then in the Beals' house, or the Pickwells, or even the McNabs. But beyond that, for a few enchanted moments each newborn morning, he believed there was not a single mom home in Two Mills, not a single one that would not happily welcome him to enter and go upstairs and curl up between its sleepers. Maybe that's why he left the bandshell bench late one night in mid-June and went to someone's backyard on Hamilton Street, someone whose leaf lettuce he'd been watching growing, and quietly opened the gate and closed it behind them, and laid himself on the white wicker love seat on the back porch. From then on, he slept in a different backyard or back porch every night. Once finding a back door unlocked, he slept in a kitchen.